Hi, welcome to This Week in Ames. I'm Susan Guiazda. On today's show, we'll check in with the City of Ames Fleet and Facilities Manager. My guest today is Paul Hinderaker, Fleet Services Director with the City. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, you've been a city employee for quite a few years. You've played a lot of different roles in the city in that time. Let's hear a little bit about your history.
Okay, I've been with the city since December of 1969 and spent the first 15 years with the city in the Public Works Department. And I was administrator, administrative assistant, and pretty much monitored and helped prepare and administer the budget over there. After that, I was given the opportunity to take over the job that I have now as Director of Fleet. And at the time, I was just Director of Fleet. And so did that for, 20-some years. And in 2009, I was asked to add some responsibility for facility management. So I'm currently the Director of Fleet and Facilities.
So I forgot you had this new title, Fleet and Facilities Director. Let's talk a little bit about the fleet side of what you do. Maybe people aren't aware that we have sort of a centralized fleet department in that you do a lot of the purchasing of vehicles and what I find interesting, a lot of research on vehicles and their effectiveness and efficiency.
The city's fleet is very unique or dynamic, if you want to say it that way, because the vehicles that are needed and the equipment that is needed to do all the different specialized services or tasks are unique. We do have just a number of cars and pickups for transportation, but for the most part the fleet consists of like street sweeper. That's a unique piece of equipment. A sewer jet, we just purchased a new sewer jet vacuum truck, which is probably one of the larger trucks that we have in the city, and that truck is used to clean out sanitary sewers and also can vacuum out the debris that's cleaned out of there. Mowers, of course, a lot of snow plow equipment,
well,
sanders
some other
and brine.
communities recently have had issues when their snow plows didn't work very well or they had breakdowns. So in addition to purchasing these, you're maintaining them and keeping them out ready to go at a moment's notice.
We do. Just to give you an idea, what we do is called cradle-to-grave fleet management and maintenance. And what that entails is doing the research to determine what's available, vehicles and/or equipment, speccing, taking bids, purchasing that equipment, and then determining what the life cycle of that is and maintaining it through that life cycle. And we at the city, for the City of Ames, we are fairly aggressive in our replacement program, and that means that we don't wear out the equipment until it's completely worn out and a piece of junk, you might say. We monitor how well they perform from a historical standpoint, and we know how many miles or hours units will run before they start to have major wear, and which takes dollars or more dollars to repair. So we try to determine what those are and replace those units before that happens. So it's a method of cost control for the city, because if you have a piece of equipment that's out working and it breaks down, we don't have equipment sitting around just in case. What we have has to be reliable and in service all the time. So if you have a unit break down, that's unfortunate because you have to fix it, and that's expensive. So we always try to keep ourselves out of that. And then
so it looks like you're constantly generating data to find that sort of sweet spot between where the unit is running at its best, but is not experiencing those major kinds of things that are expensive to fix.
We look at the history all the time. We track all the information, miles, hours. We track all the expenses, all the fuel, tires, just everything that you would want to know. And we can determine when these units start to become more expensive. And so we set that as our replacement goals.
So it sounds like a lot more science than art. You're not just guessing.
No, there's no guesswork at all to this. Do we miss the mark once in a while? We do. Things happen, just like you with your personal vehicle or whatever. Sometimes you have a surprise. Sometimes we're surprised that a unit is still in pretty good shape, and so we will inspect it frequently. We inspect the fleet pretty much every unit every year, but something that's getting close to its replacement schedule or time, we'll look at it closer. You know, we'll see what the wear and tear is and try to determine if we should go ahead and replace it, or if we should maybe extend it by 1 year or so.
One of the most interesting experiments that I've known you to have was the one where you took small compact vehicles, ones that are getting a lot of use by people in positions like meter readers, going out in the community, lots of short stops, and looking at 4 different units, different types of subcompacts to see which one really did the best in the conditions. Was that information helpful in making future purchases?
We're about 4 or 5 years into that experiment, and we know which ones are performing the best. And these are small cars. These are like a compact, which works well for the meter readers or a few places in the city that might work pretty well. And so we use that, and those would be preferred equipment or vehicles to purchase when we do.
And you're tracking miles per gallon.
We are.
And costs.
And costs, yeah. I can't tell you cost per mile. We do have that data, and we do use that again when we look at purchasing vehicles. Fuel, of course, is the single biggest cost item for us in the fleet. And so these 4 particular cars you're talking about, they're ranging in fuel efficiency, miles per gallon. They're in the high 30s. They're running 35 to almost 40 miles per gallon, which is really good because it's all city driving. It's a lot of stop and go. The folks that drive these vehicles go into their neighborhoods assigned, you know, for that day or whatever. And I know they park, and then they'll walk quite a few areas, but then they're just stopping and going and stopping and going. And that's hard on fuel economy to do
well,
that.
and to make sure people understand that we are taking fuel efficiency, keep that in mind, we've got 5 Priuses. So it's a traditional gas-powered as well as hybrid. We do.
And it has worked very well. The first one was purchased in 2007, and it was an experiment to determine if that would be something good for the city. So we purchased that, and we encouraged a number of people or departments to use the car, take it on a trip, use it around the city, so that we could see, you know, get some good utilization from it. They, as the operators, could see if it would work, you know, in their particular operation for what they're doing, and just find that good mix of a good vehicle as a fleet vehicle and a good vehicle for performing the services. So that's the hybrids are one of a number of, you might say, alternative approaches to fuel economy and excuse me, and conservation. So we have the small cars that are getting high miles per gallon. That's good. The hybrids are running, I will tell you that they range from about 28 to over 40 miles a gallon. And interesting enough, the hybrids do better on the highway than they do in town. The stop and go driving, that was promoted as being the best place for a hybrid. You don't really run just on the electric side all the time. And you can't control when the gas engine kicks in or not. So, but we're getting good fuel mileage out of those. And then, of course, the other areas are flex-fueled vehicles, which means that a vehicle can run on either gasohol or ethanol. And ethanol is E85. So if it's available or not, you can run on either one of those type things. So that's a third approach. Diesel, all the diesel equipment in the city's fleet. Now we've been running biodiesel long enough that our fuel supplier pretty much provides biodiesel all the time. And it's around 5 to 10%. Typically, in the summer times, they might blend a little higher. They might be up to 15 or 20% of biodiesel at this point. In the wintertime, that has to be a lesser amount because there's still some issues with biodiesel that will gel up in really, really cold weather. But for the most part, that's all the fuel, diesel fuel the city uses.
Well, a lot of what you're talking about sort of goes to the sustainability efforts that the City Council has really championed. One of the big projects that you lead is what we affectionately call the 15 by 14, the reduction of greenhouse gases 15% by the year 2014. And there's some parameters to that. We're not talking the entire community. We're actually just looking at a little chunk of what the city itself, as in the city organization, utilizes. Why don't you talk a little bit about that initiative?
Sure. That particular program and project actually involves the fleet, and I believe that's why I was asked to lead that effort, is because of the initiatives that we had taken in the fleet and the successes that we'd had, and try to use that throughout the city operations. So a good point on that. It's not for the community. This is strictly for the city's fleet and the city's facilities. And included in that scope is also the street lights and traffic lights, which I will say had some early successes before we formalized this program. And that fell mainly in the area of changing out the light bulbs in all of the traffic signals from an incandescent bulb to the LED lights. And that was a staged approach to doing that. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they did the red and green bulbs first because those were found to be the most active or on and off the most. And so by doing that, I believe they reduced the energy consumption by 50%.
It was fairly substantial, and those traffic lights now, to my understanding, have all been changed out. So the LEDs are
that is correct
in every traffic light, and we're also seeing some streetlight experimentation with the LEDs.
That's right. That's right, and that took a little more effort to check into some code and requirements for street lighting. But at this point, as of a couple of years ago, there were LED lights installed. I believe they're on 13th Street between Grand and Highland, down through there. The parking lot behind City Hall is all LED light, and I believe the intention was, or they did, try to put some in on Mortensen Road. So try to find some areas of experimenting to see how well they worked, how well the public received them, and whatever. So I don't have any specific data on how well what the energy on those have been. We do monitor the energy for all of the street lights and the traffic signals.
Well, the whole project for you started with a lot of baseline data, and that was really an interesting when you had to create this baseline of a year, and it ended up being several years kind of melded together.
Right.
And then using that to say from this point we're going to try to drop 15%. How are we doing? It's now 2013. Have we seen reduction?
We have. And back to the data, we captured all the data for all the areas, the fleet, facilities, and this is electric and natural gas or any energy that was used to support and use in these areas. So we looked at the data from 2001 through 2006, and we created what's called an average energy consumption, because each year is different. The weather will drive these things up and down, just a lot of conditions, and so we felt that would be a safe and fair average for the fleet, for the facilities. And so that became the baseline. Whatever the average of those numbers were became the baseline. From that, we've not pulled the data together for 2012, but after 2011, last year, and this is reported to the City Council each year, we were at the 8% reduction. And that's average over everything. Some areas were up, some areas were down. Some buildings were up, some buildings were down. So there's a lot of pieces. We have like 18 buildings. We have 260 some vehicles and equipment in the fleet. So each one, they're all independent. We track each one separately, and when you pull those together as an aggregate, then you get this average type thing.
Well, it'll be interesting to follow this experiment as it keeps going, at least for 1 year, and who knows if it'll be extended beyond that. But Paul, it's always great to hear about these programs that the city is spearheading, and we know that a lot of that comes from what residents are requesting. When residents talk to the council members and say, we're really interested in sustainability efforts or fuel economy, those voices get heard.
The other part of that is the citizens and the taxpayers will benefit from this. So I will give you the example, City Hall, for example, we've what we call relamped, so we put in all new energy efficient lighting. We put in a new heating system a couple of years ago. And the efforts that we're doing throughout the facilities are helping to reduce energy. So City Hall, good example there. Our budget request for next year is 13% less than it has been running over the years that we've been in that building, and that's $17,000.
That's great. That's really a great statistic.
Yeah. We have one more initiative that we've launched, and we're in the development stages. And that's called an energy management plan for the facilities specifically. And really what that entails is we're still doing some projects that replace heating systems or lighting or controls. And once we get those done, we're in the process of developing this management plan. It's basically intended to change our habits of how we use the facilities. When we leave a room, do we turn the lights off? When we leave for the day, is the heat shut down or stepped down? Just a lot of creatures of habit that we're going to look at facility by facility and see what is happening now and how that's working and what changes we can make. And we'll be looking at the employees to help us.
Well, we'll have to have you back in another show to get the update on how that process is working, but we appreciate you stopping by today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you've ever thought about getting more involved in local government, why not consider serving on a board or commission? There are several positions open on the Library Board or Parks and Recreation Commission. You can learn more about the positions vacant and how to apply by going to our website at cityofames.org. As we wrap up the budget process, the budget wrap-up meeting will be held on February 12th. They'll be taking public input at that time. Remember, we have to approve the budget before the March 15th deadline. If you missed any of those budget meetings, don't forget you can always check those out on video on demand right on our website. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for This Week in Ames.